and welcome back to Crypto. My God, it's a Tuesday, it's beautiful outside, and the stable coins are proliferating. Let's get right into it. The news around stablecoins just keeps expanding. I covered Plasma Chain in a recent episode and thought it was a really interesting approach to the central equity run business that Circle's been putting forth. Obviously, Circle is proliferated across numerous chains. It seems like they were going to operate it as a business. So we were setting the grounds with Circle and the Coinbase takeover, with Tether and the Plasma Chain that has zero fees. And of course, that has me leaving out one of the biggest payments platforms that exists today, which is Stripe. If you recall, Stripe purchased Privy not too long ago, and they're going out and making more purchases. Now, the news as of yesterday, coming from a job posting, which has now been removed, is that Stripe is launching their own blockchain with Paradigm, the venture firm. But Paradigm also has a long history of enhanced development resources, putting out their own code on top of Ethereum and contributing to the technical space quite a bit. Now, what's interesting here is just this concept of an L1 for Stripe. Now, there's not too many details on it now, but the big conversational topic is, if you're going to make this EVM compatible, why do your own L1 and not an L2 on top of ETH? Now, let's unpack this a little bit. The reason one would make an L2 on top of Ethereum versus their own L1 is that you are now offsetting the bootstrapping of the security features. An L2 on Ethereum allows you to focus on speed and cost without having to focus on the security, right? You roll everything up and you peg that into the Ethereum blockchain. The Ethereum blockchain has spent years promoting home validators, promoting decentralization, creating a massive network of people that support the network itself. And what they're doing is supporting that security. The security in Ethereum is massively valuable. Of course, that makes ETH a little bit slower in block time confirmations and a little pricier in gas. But you can take that away by creating an L2 that does something specific, and every so often it rolls those transactions, pegs it into ETH, and you get their security guarantee. Now, why would these chains want to go through the whole process of creating their own L1s, right? The whole value prop of an L2 is you don't have to bootstrap the security. You can just hop right in with your application utility and functionality. And of course, what I imagine we will see is just a more centralized version of an L1. So you can have a distributed validator set, but are they open? Are they available? Are they gate kept? Like, you can easily create an L1 with the security guarantees while owning and controlling all the validators. That makes the bootstrapping phase much easier. So hard to tell what we'll see with Stripe having their own blockchain. But of course, at the end of the day, when we talk about payments, when we talk about just moving money and spending with crypto, I mean, Stripe is a really excellent resource. They're already built into the Web 2 model of payments. And as I've been saying, if we could just get Apple Pay, Google Pay, right? Stripe is part of that platform. Well, then you could maybe just tap to pay with their stablecoin. My assumption is they won't only be accepting their stablecoin, but they will be promoting it and making it probably incentivized. When we look at Tether and Plasma Chain, any USDT app or any USDT function is gasless. It is free. So if you build applications on top of Plasma that use USDT, you are going to have your gas covered. It's going to make a strong incentive to build there. What will the incentive be here? Well, it's probably going to be the fact that Stripe has a massive Web 2 network with point of sales all over the place. So it's just going to be plug and play, we could say. Now, that whole conversation has been refocused even further today on Tuesday. We're so far into the week with the announcement coming from Circle of their own blockchain called ARK, introducing ARK, an open layer 1 blockchain purpose-built for stablecoin finance, from payments to FX capital markets, blah, blah, blah. And what we can see are some similar features, right? USDC as native gas. So that is the same as Plasma and Tether. However, Plasma has announced that it will be gasless for anything using Tether. If you have to pay, a couple cents, maybe sub pennies in USDC, we'll see. Built-in FX engine, deterministic sub-second finality, opt-in privacy, wink wink, and full Circle platform integration. Now, what's interesting here is that Circle's already integrated across basically every chain. They have their Circle cross-chain IP, whatever, CCIP protocol that allows you to basically transact Circle in between. Now, remember, these stablecoins, they don't require the same security features that you might need on Ethereum's L1. And that is because they are centralized issuance. If you remember, under the Genius Bill, both Circle, Tether, if they want to operate in the US, I mean, they're going to do this anyway, but they must hold reserves, one-to-one backing. So if Circle, if Tether, as it stands today, lose some funds, like somebody gets exploited, etc., they can actually go in and freeze them. So that security guarantee on the blockchain is not as necessary. On a blockchain that's open, like Ethereum, I mean, you really want to release it to the world and let it go. So you need that security inherent. This is not going to be required on these blockchains. Now, we do have the ARK white paper. And of course, it's referencing the Genius Act. So with the Genius Act passing, I mean, that's why you're seeing a lot of this come out. And it says, you know, as an EVM-compatible network, I doubt that it will be EVM only. It's, of course, using its own consensus mechanism based on Tendermint, which is a widely adopted and highly successful consensus mechanism coming out of the Cosmos world. And this is pretty common to see. Now, many people have commented on this and saying, hey, they just want to sell you another token. I don't think you're going to see that. The competition, the money maker here is to take out Swift, in my opinion, to become a fee-based system. Of course, USDC, as it stands right now, 50% of their profits are being given to Coinbase. There's very much been this Coinbase Circle partnership, and that's what I thought was going to be the attack plan there while Plasma launched for Tether. Of course, we do see that they're saying, hey, we want to control this. And you know what? If they're going after normie users, if they don't really care about the network effect of the crypto natives, then maybe it makes sense that they launch their own L1. They say, we're not doing an L2 on ETH because we don't actually care about that. We're going for something so big and so all-encompassing that we want it to be our own. So, okay, stable fee and USDC as native gas. We are seeing that there will be a flat fee. It will probably be very cheap because who really cares? And one of the biggest selling points here is deterministic settlement finality. What they are pitching very clearly through ARK is that the way the current blockchain orgs happen is that you have a probabilistic settlement. Basically, a block gets provided, it goes through all the nodes, they come to consensus, it gets locked in, you move on. But there is a slight moment where a transaction could be reorged. It's actually something that's happening in Monero right now, and I will go into that another day. For finance, they want instant finality. Now, you can get instant finality on a few blockchains. Avalanche does this really well. It's public and open. But this deterministic finality is a harbinger to the fact that they will be targeting institutions. Same with that FX reference, right? They are going to go for the institutional players, the big banks. Opt-in privacy integrates privacy-preserving technologies to enable transactions with selective transparency. They're saying that it's a prereq for sensitive financial workflows, but I mean, this one's a little sus and I got to give it a wink wink. So as I went through this, I mean, it seems fairly straightforward, but there's just elements that do make you laugh a little bit. Like, while decentralization in blockchain networks has traditionally been associated with technological resilience and censorship resistance, ARK adopts a broader perspective. ARK envisions a model of decentralization rooted in strategic collaboration with a diverse, globally distributed set of jurisdictions and systematically important institutions. This should remind you of something, guys. This is like the Fed, right? The Fed is made up of the bank CEOs. If you want to be a board member on the Fed, you need to be a holder of bank shares. This means you need to be the head of a major bank. So we can assume that ARK, in its quote-unquote decentralization, is just going to be a closed validator set of major institutions. Are we really looking at the future of money here? Sure, we're upgrading Swift. There is no doubt about that. You will get instant settlement. You will get the full digitization of money. You'll be able to interact with programmable money. That is the big upgrade here. But otherwise, I mean, this is akin to bank branches just in application format. So, like, is it super cool? Look, we've seen private blockchains launch time and time again. Is it on us to call them out to say that this is dumb? No, they're their own businesses. They can spend their own money and they can settle this however they want. Will this compete with Ethereum, with Solana, with the power of decentralized self-sovereign money? I mean, no, this is not self-sovereign. If they decide that they don't like the way you're spending your money, they can, again, blacklist you. They can freeze that cash. In so many ways, these blockchains are the US version of the CBDC, the central bank digital currency. They're just using the dollar in private company format. And of course, Circle, keep in mind, is publicly traded. You can get the equity behind it. So there's not really a reason for it to have its own token in this model. What they want is the increased use of the Circle asset. Now, what's going to happen with Stripe? Again, like, are they going to launch their own token? I doubt it. You don't need a token to incentivize distributed validators if you're going to control that validator set. And if there's only limited validators, I mean, let's think about this like Solana in its early days. You can just create, just like Ethereum L2s, one large piece of infrastructure. Let's think Mega ETH, for example, has that node that sits at the center that is centrally operated. Mega ETH is distributing it, but here they could just control the settlement themselves in the same way NASDAQ does, in the same way Visa does. Again, just a central server can handle the load and increase the transaction throughput and have finality all baked into it. So there's not really a need for an L1 token. I don't think that's going to be their play. The game here is a highly competitive ecosystem for payments to replace Swift, to have all capital flowing through your pipeline. That could be capturing small fees, and of course, these fees can add up immensely. So each one seems to be targeting their own agenda. With Plasma and USDT, they're definitely going after Tron, which is about 30% of the USDT transaction volume. Tron blockchain is not the best blockchain out there, and also for it to be a major user of the Tether asset, that's not really in Tether's best interest, right? They could control that themselves. Stripe obviously going for Web 2 point of sales and owning that customer to retailer flow. Circle and ARK definitely going for the institutional playbook with their finality, with their FX stuff built in, clearly looking to be the Wall Street player of the stablecoins. Now, will they all stay within their defined swim lanes? I have doubts, right? They're all probably gunning for everything, and may the best man win. What we can guarantee here, we are updating money. It is going digital. There is no doubt about that. However, we're moving further and further away from the Bitcoin ethos of a peer-to-peer electronic cash system that is open source, that is decentralized, and that is anti-fragile to the governments. All of these aforementioned stablecoins are not anti-fragile. If a government subpoenas these topcos, they will comply. Tether is probably the closest to being the freedom money because it sits and is so deeply rooted outside the US. The other two, I mean, they're inside the US. Circle has shareholders to be beholden to. Stripe doesn't. So maybe Stripe is actually in the beneficial position of not having that regulated onus on top of everything else. Hard to say. What is guaranteed? Digital dollars are here. They are the future. They are going to become more and more pronounced. So where everyone uses Venmo right now, we will probably see that being replaced with stablecoins issuance. If Venmo's not thinking about this, I don't know what they're doing. Obviously, post-Genius Act, this is carte blanche and go for it. Now, I did see someone say that under Genius, you know, these decentralized networks, quote unquote, like an open layer one blockchain, blah, 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 had a definition of like 2 nodes. Now, I quickly asked GPT what it says in the Genius Act, and basically it does define a digital asset as any digital representation of the value that is recorded on a cryptographically secured distributed ledger. So that distribution, that might just mean more than one node. It's hard to tell. The distributed ledger is defined as technology in which data is shared across a network that creates a public digital ledger of verified transactions or information among network participants, and cryptography is used to link the data and maintain the integrity of the public ledger and execute other functions. So a lot of this doesn't really have to do with creating true decentralization. They're just saying it needs to be distributed across a few parties. We're probably going to see an entire slew of these private chains come out. We've seen this happen time and time again. Private chains have just never really taken off. That doesn't mean that for payments, they might not find their little PMF. But in a nutshell, what we are seeing is the adoption of digital money, less so the adoption of public digital money. For all intents and purposes, the printed paper dollar will be more privacy preserving than any of these assets, and it will provide a lot more liberty, a lot more self-sovereignty. So that's going to be interesting. On the flip side, you'll be able to buy anything in a second. You'll be able to move money at the speed of data. And of course, we have that update. So is this bullish for Ethereum? Like, hard to tell. Just because they're EVM compatible now doesn't mean they won't be SVM compatible. Like, why would these issuers limit the areas that their money can go? That being said, hugely bullish to the expansion of blockchain technology, of digital monies that will create applications built on top of it. And as they grow, there's no reason why this isn't bullish for the public blockchains that also continue to secure so much capital. I would imagine Aave will be interoperable. It might have its own instances. So if you live on the ARK blockchain, you might just have to take out loans from ARK only Aave instances. But we shall see how this expands. It's all good for the sector. I mean, is it great? Hard to say, but adoption is certainly happening. It's just a different adoption than what we want. Of course, JP Morgan Chase could launch their own blockchain that is only accessible from certain specific brick and mortar branches. I mean, what really separates this from just being another bank account? That's the curiosity. And of course, they cannot pass that yield on to their network operators. So these L1 node operators are not generating the yield from the T-bills. Remember, we can't share that according to the Genius bill. But anyway, that might change. And maybe this will be a major incentive for network operators to come in and to contribute. If that yield from T-bills can be passed out, then we will have a new actual mega utility coming from T-bills, which would mean that the Fed now has a much greater distribution network. Anyone that helps facilitate digital monies could potentially gain the yield coming from T-bills. It could be great for the United States. I don't know. These are all speculations. But interesting times for sure. The market's doing really well. Don't over lever, stay safe, and I will see you tomorrow.